Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the European crossover webinar. And bear with me. Let me shut this. Not shut it. Let me close this off. Okay, there. And thought I already had that window open, so apologies there. Hang on. And I was just popping in the economic data right here. So coming into today, obviously, we know we got the big granddaddy of them all, which is the non-farm payrolls. It's probably the first non-farm payrolls I've seen that we don't have it. There's not like a real big expectation on this. Obviously, with everything that's going on with the election, I kind of think it's almost like, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter, but I don't see it making a whole lot of difference. The only thing is we are up here in the highs, with the bounce back that we've seen with equities. But anyway, coming into today, we just got Italian retail sales. Prior to that, bear with me, French non-farm payrolls. UK Halifax house prices. And as I mentioned before, non-farm payroll. I just don't see it making that much of a big deal. I guess because of everything going on with, as I mentioned, the election. We do have Canadian employment. So this ought to make for a bit of a double whammy, so to speak. And then we do get wholesale inventories at 10 a.m. Eastern. Wow. And Canadian IV PMI also. Wow. So this will be pretty impactful as far as with the Canadian dollar. Let's go move this out of the way. I actually have it on the shorter date. You can see here with the 5-minute. I'm going to move this over here. And Irina says, good morning, and good morning to you, Irina. And let's switch into the daily for the equities. Hang on a moment. Have on the super short term right there. And there we go. You can see kind of where we stand. We've had a heck of a run. Like, look at these runs. We did finally kind of pare back a little bit on the open, not a whole lot. I mean, open. Once we got past FOMC, as far as, once they announced it, we kind of pared back a little bit. We came back also actually on Apple after we kind of sold off a little bit. But you can see, if you look at this, look at some of these moves. Look at Google, NVIDIA, Facebook. I mean, we are really way up here in the stars. Amazon, Microsoft made it to resistance, so we just barely backed off just a little bit. And this is on the daily chart. And then, of course, Apple up here. Let's go and take a look where we stand here with the equities. And you can see here that we've stayed, despite the move. I mean, we had a pretty good bounce back from a technical standpoint. You see we broke that line, trend line, and we just continued to move higher. Okay, that's fine. We have pulled back just a bit here. Not a whole lot, but a bit here. We're right here at this. There we go. 11,927, and we kind of pulled back just a little bit here, but we haven't given much back, and that's the only thing that I was a bit surprised that we may have be open. We talked about, I remember at least with Irene, and I think I forgot who else I was speaking with. I was expecting a little bit of a pullback once we got past FOMC. We did not really a whole lot, but we have some. Um, I guess with the bounce back we've seen, one thing is that we we expected that if Biden were to get elected, we were going to see a bounce back. But I was thinking, and most of the market thought also, we were going to get a blue wave. We're not getting a blue wave, although because of the I won't say the election, but the results in Georgia, it's kind of tightened up so much that we've gotten to a point where Georgia was the one state that had two senators on the ballot, and in Georgia, if you don't get a full 50%, and I guess he must have maybe a third party candidate, then you have to have a runoff. Well, because of that, it looks like they are going to have a runoff for those two. So currently, right now, the Senate is 48-48 from what I understand. So actually, there's a chance that the Democrats could ultimately end up controlling the Senate. Those additional elections, I guess what we call it, runoff elections, would take place, I think, in the first week of January. So that's something. I mean, that could kind of keep us in this area here. Once again, we hung around pretty well once we got past FOMC. And once again, I guess, you have to be careful shorting this, I suppose. I did take a short after FOMC, and I did go into cover. And then we bounced back a little bit, and then finally in Asia we kind of broke down some. But you can't say that there's anything specifically other than just a very short term basis why we would have wanted to come in and short it. But anyway, that being said, that's where we're at. Let's go and take a look at the S&P. Same thing here. Actually, S&P looks pretty good up there. And we actually have like a little gravestone doji here, so you can see this dip back here, and you can see here where the NASDAQ. On the sell-off, you can see here we went right back up here and tested 2-day VWAP, and we faded from there. But we'll see how things go and play out once we get past NFP. Giuseppe says, good day, Polly. Thank God it's Friday. Hey, Giuseppe. And Irina says, what do you think on Microsoft? Okay, so we'll go and take a look at Microsoft, and we'll cover the news too. Bear with me. I grab my other glasses, and it's like, oh, not too clear at all. Okay, here we go. Much better. Let's go. We'll go in. I'll tell you what. Before we do that, let's just go and quickly cover the news. But we'll definitely go and take a look at Microsoft. Let's just go and pull that up while we have this up. Actually got a few little bits of news here. Let's pull those up. And we'll quickly get to that. The Australian New Zealand dollar set for solid weekly gains as the greenback softens. Wow, this Australian and New Zealand dollar, especially the Australian dollar, holy smokes, what a turnaround. We'll get to that, but wow. Australian New Zealand dollars were poised for strong weekly gains on Friday against its U.S. counterpart, which struggles as a contentious presidential election, diminished hopes of a fiscal stimulus to support the economy. So this, in a way, encapsulates to a certain extent. I mean, last evening, early in the evening, Trump held wasn't a news conference, but it was whatever, in the White House briefing room, and not unsurprising, but he was, the market didn't have that much of an impact to it, but of course he was saying, hey, the election is a fraud, blah blah, and obviously most of y'all know is that the reason that we have to have the votes, still counting the votes, was because with the pandemic, a far greater amount of Democratic voters went and voted per the pandemic with the early votes, or mail-in voting. I should say the mail-in voting. And Trump had pushed for so many of his supporters to do same-day voting at the polls, which they did. Hence, we had this big swing with early gains on the Trump side, which have seen them erode and kind of turn the other way towards the Democrat, and that's why what's going on there. Now, once again, that being said, this part hopes of a fiscal stimulus to support the economy. Well, here's the key thing: is that as the race has tightened up so much in Georgia, I think at one point Trump might have like a 400,000 vote uh, premium, if you want to call that, or lead. That's been whittled all the way down to from last night, and I was up pretty late watching the news, up to down to a 1,700 vote premium. So there's a decent chance that Biden will end up overtaking that one. It does look like he's going to overtake Pennsylvania, which is more key, but still, Georgia is pretty key because, as I told you before, now there's definitely one runoff, and now it looks like it's going to be two runoffs on the two Senate seats. Right now, the thing is 48-48. So if those two won't be resolved to the first week of January, so if the Democrats were to win those two, they would actually have control. So we'll see how that all plays out. Anyway, that being said, Australian dollar was down to 72.65 as local investors fretted over the country's relationship with China, its largest trading partner. Currency traders, however, said that the trade relations are yet to hit the overall exports. Diplomatic relations between economies have begun strained after Beijing was angered by Australia's call for an international inquiry into the source of the coronavirus. Oh, wow, I'm sure that must have ticked them off. And Australian police raids connected to a foreign interference investigation. New Zealand dollar climbed to 67.81. Investors are also closely watching the results of the U.S. presidential election and leapt onto the prospect of gridlock in Congress and the notion Silicon Valley will be spared greater insight if the Democrats, in fact, was unable to control the Senate. Well, like I told you, one of the things is we've seen where Trump says, oh, it's a fraud or this. Well, from what they've seen is, one moment, and I just noticed I didn't even post a thing which said, hey, guys, webinar live. Sorry about that. Hang on one moment. I thought I had posted it at the time. That being said, once again, I think that's I have so many things spinning around my head right now in relation to this, because even though the election, it's still kind of hanging. Well, Biden is leading, but here's the key thing. The market was scared that Trump was going to do what he did do. The point is the reason I think you're not seeing a greater impact because of what he did do, saying, oh, it's a fraud, I'm being cheated, blah, 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 is because we are not seeing any signs of that really happening. Like when you look at Georgia, that's it's run by a Republican governor, and the Secretary of State, which is one that handles the overall office that would handle the overall election, the Secretary of State's a Republican. And the two senators from Georgia are Republican. In Arizona, that's run by a Republican. The ones that Trump is making a big deal about is Pennsylvania, because that's a Democratic governor, and also I mentioned Michigan. But that being said, I think that's why we haven't seen a greater reaction by the market, because it looks pretty clear there's not any kind of a funny business going on. Not to mention, one of the things that some of the Democrats were even laughing about, if it was a rigged election, they're doing a pretty horrible job at rigging the election, because the Republicans didn't lose any seats in the House. The Democrats haven't overtaken the Senate, and everybody thought they're going to overtake the Senate. So the only one who is having a bad, I guess I'd say a bad hair day, so to speak, is Trump. So, I mean, if it's a rigged election, how is it that the Democrats didn't gain any seats in the House? I mean, the Republicans held all their seats, didn't lose a seat in the House, and the Senate didn't split. So the only one who is, like I said, as they say, having a bad hair day is Trump. So there's nothing that points to any kind of a rigged election and all this other stuff. So that's why I think the market is, I wouldn't say it's taking it in stride. We just haven't seen that big of a reaction in light of all this craziness that's going on. And like I said, in light of the Senate, be careful is that, like I said, with Georgia, it's come to a point that the difference in the totals now is only 1,700 votes. So it's actually brought it to where the two Senate runoffs, the Senate uh, elections, and with Georgia, if you don't go over 50%, then it goes into a runoff, and because of that, as I said, then it now looks like those two seats would have a runoff in the first week of January, and currently right now we're 48-48. So if the Democrats win both those seats, they'd be in control. So just want to go on and share and all that. So it is kind of crazy, though. Such an outcome would demand greater action for the U.S. Federal Reserve, they added, which that was the case. Risk, again, is firmly on the front foot, said Chris Weston, Melbourne-based strategist for Pepperstone. The rally in the U.S. equities has hit the dollar. So our job is simply to find the best currency to trade, and that it could be the Noki, the Kiwi, or the Odd. Some analysts said the antipodian currencies could also benefit from expected improvement in Sino-U.S. relations under a Biden presidency. Closer to home, the RBA releases quarterly economic forecast providing faster growth for the Australian's $2 trillion economy while signaling further cuts to interest rates already at record lows, which is highly unlikely, they're stating. However, the forecasts still don't have the RBA achieving its objective over the coming 2 years, which means we have to be alert to the prospect of yet more stimulus from the RBA. Now let's go on and grab the other story, and we will get to Microsoft, so don't worry, Irina. Just trying to hit all the news. Sterling fell against the euro on Thursday after the Bank of England increased its already huge bond buying stimulus by 150 billion pounds. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said the central bank was ready to pump even more money into Britain's economy if the outlook for the inflation weakens. The BOE kept its benchmark interest rate unchanged at 1/10 on Thursday. Its expansion of its bond buying program by 150 billion pounds was less than some had expected, prompting the pound to initially rise against the euro and the dollar before pulling back against the euro. The pound gained on the BOE decision. That is because it already fumbled, or I should say tumbled. Yesterday on reports saying that the BOE is considered a move into the negative interest rates. It could expand its QE program by 150 to 200 billion pounds. The Telegraph newspaper reported on Wednesday that without citing any sources, that the central bank was considering a move into negative interest rates, while the Sun newspaper had reported the central bank might expand its quantitative easing program by 150 to 200 billion pounds. However, it held on to gains against the dollar that weakened broadly as investors adjusted for the prospect that Republicans will maintain control of the U.S. Senate. But as I told you, let me get a drink of water real quick. That has kind of changed over the last 24 hours now, because as I said, if the race tightening up in Georgia, and that's the one state that actually has two Senate seats, voting, if you want to call it. And because of that, it looks like they're not reaching that 50% threshold. They're going to have a runoff, and now it's 48-48. So if the Democrats were to win those two seats in January, they could have control of the Senate. Boy, that election is just going to be bananas. But anyway, moving ahead, we believe the pound's faith is likely to stay mostly linked to developments surrounding the Brexit landscape. Anything suggesting a deal could be found in the next few weeks may prove supportive for the currency, while signs that the difference gap is narrowing may result in weakness. And finally, one last one for the over $1. I just want to touch all the news. The reason I cover the news for some of those that are relatively new is that it kind of gives us a little bit of a sets a tone for the day ahead. Although, that being said, the news is changing. I wouldn't say changing so fast, but it kind of is. The key states that they're looking to, I'm sure that many of y'all know, maybe you don't know, and I'm kind of a news junkie. The key states, obviously, that they're looking to is going to be Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. Now, North Carolina hasn't been called, but it's pretty much a done deal. And Alaska is going to go the way of Trump. But once again, what was once like probably about almost a 400,000 vote premium has now dwindled all the way to 1,700, and that's in Georgia. And we have the two Senate seats up, and because they didn't reach the 50% threshold, uh, as of yesterday, late yesterday, it now looks that we will have a runoff at both those. So that's hugely impactful because, as I mentioned, if the Democrats win that runoff in January, on both those seats, they would control the Senate. It really will turn things around then. You see what I'm saying? And then, of course, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that lead at one time, I think, was 600,000. And that's dipped down all the way to, I think it's 34,000. But the votes are there for them, and the trajectory is really on par for them to almost, I don't want to say definitively, but it looks like it's going that way. Definitively for not only for Biden to catch up, but to overtake. And once again, Pennsylvania is 20 electoral votes. He gets Pennsylvania today, or I mean, they probably would wait before they called it. That's it. Game over. It's already done. So it really looks like that's why we're providing the news, but the news is changing so quickly. Unless you're a news junkie, like I said, is that yesterday it looked like, hey, we could get a runoff in one of the Senate seats. We are getting that. And actually, late yesterday evening or in the evening, early evening in the States, now it looks like the other one. And so now we can have this Democrats could eventually take, if they win both seats, they would have control of the Senate. So anyway, that catches us up. So the dollar steadied against many currencies on Friday, but traders say more losses are likely as a contentious U.S. presidential election, diminished hopes for a large stimulus. As I told you, because it doesn't look like there's no funny business going on, and you're seeing these gains continue to even move, like in Arizona, that's a Republican governor. And so, and also, really, Trump and maybe a couple of people have only said their stuff about this. You're not hearing that from anything coming out of Arizona. And in Georgia, as I mentioned, that's a Republican governor with a Republican Secretary of State, two Republican senators, and you're not hearing anything that's saying, oh, there's fraud and everything going on. I think that's why the market is taking it, I wouldn't say in stride, we're taking it much better than, with Trump saying, oh, it's a fraud, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's why the market's been able to deal with it so far. So anyway, I just want to catch us up there. It is a European crossover webinar, trying to give you some flavor as to where we stand right now. Obviously, NFP is big, but like I told you, in this vein or in this situation we're in, it's the one time that I think the NFP is not really going to make that big of a deal. And there's a pretty good chance that we'll have news that where Biden could actually be considered potentially. It looks that way, but I'm saying is I don't think they would actually call the Pennsylvania race, but it looks like it's heading that way to the point that's going to be like, wow, he's going to take Pennsylvania. That's it. It's done. It's over. And that's actually going to be market positive. But that being said, the dollar index against a basket of six major currencies stood at 92.64. A large decline in long-term treasury yields due to expectations for less fiscal spending combined with the rally in equities and other riskier assets has placed the dollar under consistent selling pressure that is likely to continue. There's a green light to the resumption of dollar selling, reflecting past declines in real interest rates at rate of trail. There's an argument that the U.S. Federal Reserve will have to backstop risk assets. The pandemic is still trending in the wrong direction. Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has vowed to work closely with overseas authorities to keep the currency stable. The pound traded at 31.27. Voting from tallies from several U.S. States continue to trickle in during the Asian session, but currency showed little reaction because the declaration of the outright winner could take several more days or even weeks. Well, I think we're going to know really by Saturday. It's pretty much a done deal. Now, they have to certify those, blah, 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 but the numbers are already there and the momentum has been like bananas. It's been like I said, you've gone from 600,000 all the way down to only, what is it now, like 28 or 30,000. You've gone from 360,000 in Georgia or 400,000 all the way down to only 1,700. So you can see the momentum's going that way. And because so many of the Democrats went with the mail-in voting and the Republicans were pushed by Trump to vote on the extra day of the election, is like you can see the wave. I'm not necessarily a wave, but I'm saying you can see the momentum going, and there's no signs of it backing down. Trump is threatening to take legal action to win the election, said Koji Sasaki, which we already know about. That if this, there will be political vacuum and anxieties about stagnation. And that's why I'm thinking we're not seeing that. You see, if we were seeing like real panic, I wouldn't say panic, you'd have seen this much lower. Like, what the heck is still doing up here? I thought we're having all these problems. And that's why I think the market is taking it in stride. Yes, it's terrible what Trump is doing, but I'm saying is I think the market's looking around saying, hey, we're not seeing anything. And more importantly, some of these states where Biden is in the lead or moving towards, those are Republican states, and the Republican governors and Republican Secretary of States aren't saying anything or coming out and vocally saying, oh, this or that. So that's what I think the market's saying. And then, like I said, when you look at it, the Republicans held all their seats in the House. The Senate did not roll over. So the only one who's having a bad hair day, to repeat it again, is Trump. So you're not seeing anything that suggests, oh, there's something, a bunch of phony baloney or something going on with the election. It's just not adding up. Anyway, investors were awaiting the release of the U.S. non-farm payrolls, which is forecast to show a slight slowdown in job creation. Worries about the U.S. economy are growing, which is a reason to expect declines in the dollar to continue into next year. So enough of that. Let's go and get to Microsoft, and then we'll get to the analysis because I really wanted to want us to take a look at Microsoft. So hang on, bear with me one moment. We've already gone a half an hour basically, and I haven't even got to the analysis, but I thought it was key to bring us up to where we're at as far as all the news, because a lot of that news for any of you appearing traders would have taken place while you were asleep. I'm talking about the moves that it even referenced that were happening in the Asian session. So I wanted to bring you up to speed on that. I was up pretty late. I only caught, I think it's an hour and a half worth of sleep. But anyway, let me go on and move into, there we go. So she wanted to take a look at Microsoft. Well, we did rally back up here. Let's open this up a little bit better. We're looking at the daily, okay? And we've come right here, which is a 224. Look, to me, the way I look at it, let's get rid of this because that's no longer valid. Look at this. This is one heck of a move, folks. Look at this. Can you imagine that? And many of the NASDAQ stocks, that's what I was thinking, oh, post FOMC, we're gonna sell off or pare back. And we haven't. I mean, we've pared back like a little bit, but I'm saying, look at this rally. Holy smokes, from 200 to 224. And this is something you might see like with NVIDIA or something, but this is just a huge move. Now, this whole area of 224 is pretty key resistance. The way I look at it, it is what it is right there. And what I mean by that is it's 224. You have to let us get past the NFP. But I told you, I don't think the NFP is such of a big deal today. So my take is you have to look at the outer thing. Like you'd think, wow, with everything that's happened, and Trump went and had in the White House briefing room, the election's a fraud. He, laid out all of his concerns and blah, blah. You're like, what the heck? Shouldn't this be a whole lot lower? Now, that being said, in the aftermarket or pre-market, Microsoft is trading 220. So it's right here. We'll, let's give up the 30-minute. You can see here, we've turned back from there, the 224. And that's $4 off, so it's not nothing to sneeze at, but it's not like we've seen a wild sell-off or pretty good pair back. And that's after a pretty big solid run. Let's go back. Look at this. So we pulled back to here, but it's not like you would have thought if we really wanted to pair back, or because everything that Trump said, or what they're talking about, you saw what we talked about in the news, this contentious election, then we should probably be back to around here, 214-ish. The fact that we've only paired back to 220, but look how much we've rallied from 200 to 224, so we pulled back $4. That is not much considering all the contentiousness that we're seeing with the election, What Trump said, and I think that the reason you're seeing that, remember, the market always thought there was going to be a better deal for the market if Biden won. And also, it looks like it's certainly heading that way, or the way everything's playing out, because of all the early voting. The shift in those numbers is going Biden's way. And also, the shift makes sense because so many of the Democrats voted the early mail voting. So there's no like, oh, something funny business is going on. So that being said, once again, the reason I bring that up is because everything still points to whether Biden looks like they wouldn't be outright declared official winner, but it's pretty much like a done deal. What I'm saying is would be like Friday or Saturday. Everything still looks, I won't say hunky-dory, but looks okay up here. And there's no real, that the market can see, there's no real, what you'd call, oh, there's fraud here. And I think that's the reason why the market's holding up so well. And okay, wait a minute, Georgia is turning around. Oh, isn't that a Republican governorship with a Republican Secretary of State and 2 Republican senators and nobody's saying anything in this state? That's what I'm thinking. The market is taking it much well. Arizona, Republican governor, and Biden has been leading. That's why I think the market has taken it in pretty well. So when I look at that, here's the deal, and I think that what's his name, and we referenced that, Chris Weston from Melbourne Securities, he said, hey, look, risk on is afoot. That's it. Hey, look, until we see the market break here, it's still bullish. You got to go. One of the things I mentioned yesterday, and I pointed out to some people, I was looking at the VWAP, and I think I was looking also on the equities, but I mentioned about the NASDAQ, and I said about 50 handles before we got there, I said, hey, there's the daily VWAP, and we actually weighted down there, and we bounced off of that. I think it's like 60 handles. Eventually, we didn't move much higher. But my point was, hey, look, the market is bullish right now. So on the dips, you just got to play it from that technical mode, looking at it that way. And I think that's what you have to look at here. So when Irina is asking about the Microsoft, yeah, we've got good resistance at 224. In the pre-market, they're 220, but this market is still on a pretty good bullish move. So they're going to buy it on dips. Now, what would be support? Well, you can see right now it's 216. They are trading right now at 220. We'll pull up the 30-minute to see where it's at. Pre-market, you can see right there, 220. But here's the support. You see that? Clears the bell right there, 216. So anyway, let's go and get to the analysis. Did want to touch on that for her. With me, let me get another drink. Doggone, I was thirsty. Let me go into the bias chart. This has been the fastest week. I mean, I can't even believe it's already Friday. I mean, it feels like, of course, like they say, thank God it's Friday, but holy smokes. So let's go into the analysis. This euro is something else. Look at that. Holy smokes. The euro closed on Thursday with a solid day, eclipsing the 118 area. Resistance on Friday will be 1843, which looks like we're right there, with support at 1780. So, resistance 1843, but we have gone above it. This is bullish, clearly, and support is 1780. Look, from a technical standpoint, and I'm saying it's the same thing with the equities, or like what I was explaining to Irina on the Microsoft. Look, the only way you can play this, I mean, you can short it. There were some opportunities. I mean, I put it in the chat room. It did get above yesterday's bias chart, but at the time, and I think Amanda had a really good one. She shorted, I think, right there at the high. That she was stating that was a 61%. And I had noted in the chat when it got up to 1845 that we saw 1,500 contracts go off the board, and then we started to dip back. We did make another high for an additional, what was it, 14 ticks or pips, and then we did go on and back off. And then some of them, I know DK Trader had a nice short. I did see when he put on his position, a couple other traders and some I think went long dollar CAD. But here's the deal: it's being played from the long side until it's proven wrong, and you can see clearly the momentum's going that way. So they're going to try and push it. But like I said, we're here. We'll see what happens. But anyway, that was my take on that. Is that right now that's what's happening, and we're going into a Friday. I'm Friday. We are in Friday, but I'm saying is we're going into the end of the week. I don't know that we'll make it all the way up to 1870, but it's not like I don't think any those that have been forced out, they're already out. I think could they make it up to 1870? Certainly, and that would be the logical resistance. But I didn't want to just say, oh well, that's it right there. No, because I think this is a pretty good area here, and why I've got the buy shot resistance here for 1843. We did make it up to 18, looks like 1852, but I like that 1843. So there it is. Let's go and move into the cable. Bear with me. Anyway, so much stuff has happened. I was trying to bring everybody up to snuff. Like what the outlook is and where we stand. And I'm talking with this U.S. election and how I think it's being viewed. Like, wow, I can't believe Trump said that. Why isn't the market much lower? Well, it is a little bit, but you're right. It's not off a whole lot, and I think that's the reason why. For the reasons I already detailed, I want to go over them again ad nauseum. Okay, so let's go on and move in, right here with the cable. There we go. So the cable posted a solid bullish engulfing line, closing at the highs near 31.51. You can see that. Resistance will be 31.82 with support at 30.60. Now let's go into the Aussie. Man, this Aussie is bananas. What a turnaround. Look at that. I mean, this is a monster. I'm not even joking. So the Aussie posted a big follow-through positive close on Thursday. And I say about follow-throughs because here was Wednesday and here was Thursday. I mean, it's like they wasn't playing around. Resistance on Friday will be 73.10. We are giving a little bit more room than what we're looking for on the euro. With support at 72.10. Wow, what a heck of a range. But that's where we're at. But it's been a heck of a run already. So 72.10. 73.10. And let's go into the Kiwi. So the Kiwi rallied, closing into resistance level of 67.69. You can see that. Resistance on Friday will be 67.96. So it looks like we made it up to about 68.01 or whatever, with support at 67.07. Now, once again, if you ever want to know where the resistance, I post this. It's in the basic technical listed under Asian update. So if you don't want to wait until, like, let's say, our time things are different because I was going to say 1:30 in the morning, which probably means nothing to y'all, which I think would be like 7:30 in the morning in European time. But my point is that if so, and you're saying like, well, we're moving pretty good, like the Aussie's moving pretty good, like where's resistance? Or where's that resistance supposed to be? You can go into basic technical and then look under Asian update, and it would have that analysis. So the notes that I'm sharing here is in the Asian update. Under basic technical, Asian update, it'll say that for the Kiwi. So let's go and move on to the dollar CAD. And I think you have to be careful today because, like I said, it is on a Friday, but we have non-farm payroll, Canadian employment, Canadian IVPMI. What if, and I think there's a pretty good chance they'll flip the numbers this morning, potentially, in Georgia, which would give that towards Biden. Yeah, my take is we have a lot of cross currents. So I think you have to be careful in your positions. And look how much we've already sold off. Like the same thing here with the dollar CAD. I think those that may have been long, they've already been knocked out of the box. Same thing with the euro. Those that were short, they've already been knocked out of the box. I'm just not sure how much more follow through. So I think you have to be careful. Dollar CAD closed below 31, challenging the level of 30.37. Support on Friday will be 30.17 with resistance at 31.44. I don't think we're going to get up there, but it is what it is. 30.17. Anyway, I'm babbling on, but I hope that this kind of helps. I mean, as far as once again, there's just it's almost like we're dealing with a lot of little cross currents. So you have to be careful there, and just trying to bring everybody up to speed as to what it looks like. And like, wow, if Trump did all that, why aren't indices a lot lower? And those reasons that I've pointed out to, there's just no signs of any kind of real fraud, despite what he says. And if that's the case, then why aren't everybody else being affected? Why didn't the Democrats just roll the House and add on way more seats? And why hasn't the Democrats taken over the Senate if there's all this widespread fraud? Looks like you're the only one that has that's being truly negatively impacted, meaning Trump. So I think that's why the market is taking it much more, I wouldn't say in stride, but it hasn't been impacted from a negative standpoint. Let's move into the dollar peso. Okay, bear with me. So the dollar peso closed below key level of 2076. Let me see that. Opening challenge of 2054 was supported 2046. Resistance will be 2089. Well, we haven't busted down there, so we'll go with the 2054 ahead of that 2048. And resistance will be 2089. Let's go moving to the dollar yen. Holy smokes, we're still dipping. This dollar yen something else. So the dollar yen broke hard below the 452 area or level on Thursday, closing below 350. Support on Friday will be 325 with resistance at 416. I don't think you're going to make it up to 416. Almost seems crazy to be saying 416. But that's where it would be if it came all the way back up here. And let's tell you what, let's go with the low on that wick and let's see what it is. Well, 415, 416, Mox next, as my dad used to say. Which I believe is German for makes no difference. Cash dollar index. And the cash dollar index, the dollar index broke lower on Thursday, closing below 92.68. Support on Friday will be 92.39 with resistance at 93.42. And that seems like a pretty far-fetched number to get to. Let's look at the wick low. So 92.39, and look at the low on this wick. That's 93.10. We'll go with the 93.10 because we're just in bad shape right now. 92.39, 93.10, and it's definitely not bullish. Let's go into the Kiwi yen. I don't see any changes here. 70.26. And 69.54. We did make it up to, you can see right here with this body, but I'll still stick with this 70.26, so no changes there. Let's go and move into the euro pound. Boy, they turned that thing around. Resistance is going to be right there, which is going to be 90.37. Boy, this thing's all over the place. And support. We'll go with that lower wick right there, which is 89.83. And the euro watt, pretty good sell-off. But you can see here we've come into some volume here, and that's where they found that low 62.31. So let's go with the 62.31. Upside, the low wick here, 63.38. And let's go to Euro Kiwi. We're trading pretty tight now. We'll go with that closing low. I mean, the wick right here for resistance. And that would be 75.31. We're trading pretty tight. We did take this out here. Let's just go with the low of the day for right now. I don't think we're going to be back down there again, which would be 74 even. And with that, let's go move into the Aussie yen. Let's just go with the high wick right there, which is 75.46 for resistance. with support right there at that closing here, 74.65. And with the guppy. Trading pretty quiet today. Upside resistance will be that closing bar right there, 36.48. And on the low side, 35.20. Let's go with the, boy, it's a trading super tight today. We'll go with the low on this bar here, which is going to be 35.37. Starting odd. Let's close this out. Trade pretty quiet. So we're just going to go with yesterday's high and low. There's a high right there. You can see that, which is 81.33. And the low, 79.94. So in today's trade, as I mentioned, we've got non-farm payroll, we've got the Canadian employment, we have Canadian IVPMI, and what else do we have? I think it's wholesale inventories at 9 a.m. Eastern, or 10 a.m. Eastern. Um, Look, these markets are a bit overstretched, but you have to take into consideration, we are dipping right now in NASDAQ a bit. We'll get to that. You see we're retesting this area here, which is 11,908 here on the 30-minute. So we come back. Remember, we were at the 927. Now you can see right here. So that would have boded for us to work a little bit lower, considering where we're at with this bar. See right there? Open that door for them to test a little bit lower. And still not a bad move. That was 950 or 56. And look, well, that makes some sense that we're taking a dip there. And remember, look here, against this 2-day VWAP, we came down here and retested it. This is what I was talking about yesterday. You see here that we came down to 2-day VWAP, and then we saw a pretty good strong rebound. We dipped back. So we've tested the 2-day VWAP here, which is also coming into some resistance coming right across here. And look, it's been down, down, down from there. But that being said, I think you'll have to look at everything on a little bit closer time basis for today's session. We may go and pair back, and we talked about that. We said it had such a good run that we might see some slide back. But I think you have to be a bit careful. If it looks like Biden's won, then you may see it pop back in. I think it'd probably be a good area to fade into, but once again, into a Friday, I think it'd be okay for day trading this. So I think that you can look to fade moves if it was the NASDAQ. Back towards this level would be risk level, which is 11,970, okay, is your initial risk level. And beyond that would be right here, which would be 12,019. So pretty good. You got two right here, 970 and 12,019. And if you're looking at the SPOOs, I can pull that over here. You'd be looking at right here. $34.80, which is 20 handles higher, and $34.97. And that will do it. And thanks for joining us here on the European crossover webinar, and we'll see you in the chat room.